We can't afford just to tinker around the edges, a tax credit here, a regulation there. Our fight is for big structural change.
Elizabeth Warren wants the federal government to provide free health care for every American, college for every student who wants it, childcare for every parent, and housing for low-income families. And she wants to pay for it all with a new tax on the richest of the rich. She calls it the Ultra-Millionaire Tax. Skimming a bit more off the top of the bank accounts of the ultra-wealthy might sound like a good deal for working and middle-class Americans who feel like they're falling behind. But the reality is that wealth taxes have been tried before, and they haven't worked the way that Warren promises. Here's why. Warren wants to levy a 2% annual wealth tax on all households with a net worth over $50 million, and a 3% annual tax on those households with net worths over $1 billion.
All I'm asking for is a little slice from the tippy top.
A 2 or 3% tax on multimillionaires and billionaires might not sound like much.
They got to pitch in 2 cents, and 2 cents on every dollar after that.
But wealth taxes are different than other taxes, like, say, an income tax or a sales tax, which tax money when it moves around. A wealth tax, on the other hand, taxes the same pot of money every year, meaning that over time it becomes smaller and smaller. It's essentially a tax on large savings, the money that investors and entrepreneurs rely on to start new businesses.
But I do think a system that allows billionaires to exist when there are parts of Alabama where people are still getting ringworm because they don't have access to public health is wrong.
Unlike Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Warren has never said that the existence of billionaires is immoral. But her plan to tax 2 to 3% of their wealth on an annual basis is clearly motivated, at least in part, by a desire to reduce their wealth and what she perceives as a power imbalance in our society. The economists who helped Warren design her plan have said that the idea is to make rich people less wealthy. If very rich people have to pay a percentage of their wealth in taxes each year, it makes it harder for them to maintain their wealth. In analyzing her plan, they wrote that one of the key motivations for introducing a progressive wealth tax is to curb the growing concentration of wealth. It's not really about raising tax revenue, it's about using government power to make sure rich people have less.
That much wealth is bad for our economy and bad for our democracy.
Warren has often pitched her plan as a way to raise money from the ultra-rich to pay for more government benefits for everyone else. And on that count, it's likely to fall short. Warren says her tax plan will raise $2.75 trillion over a 10-year period. But other countries have tried wealth taxes and found that they raise far less money than expected. In 1990, there were 12 OECD nations with wealth taxes similar to Warren's. Today, only 4 remain.
In Scandinavia, of course, healthcare is a right. Higher education is free.
Despite the tendency of politicians like Bernie Sanders to hold up Denmark and Sweden as paragons of democratic socialism that the US should emulate, the reality is that both nixed their wealth taxes in the 1990s because too many rich citizens were pulling their money out of the country. This capital flight resulted in lower rates of entrepreneurship and relative economic stagnation. Not only did the wealth tax hurt the economy, it didn't even raise the money it was supposed to. When Sweden eliminated its wealth tax, it had virtually no effect on government finances. France tried a wealth tax for more than a decade, starting in 2000. It helped push an estimated 42,000 millionaires out of the country. They didn't pay the tax, they just left. But Warren wants to get around the capital flight problem by taxing the money no matter where in the world it's located, and imposing a 40% exit tax on anyone who wants to renounce his or her citizenship.
We're going to be out there counting them and watching them. What we built right into the plan was far more sophisticated and more investment in the enforcement.
Warren's plan relies on hiring more IRS agents, partly to deal with the complexity of evaluating total individual wealth. But throwing more tax collectors at the problem isn't going to change the fact that the wealthy are very good at protecting their money by offshoring it or by putting it into unique, hard-to-value assets like artwork. Austria was one of the countries that used to have a wealth tax. One of the reasons the country ended it was because the cost of enforcement was so high. Based on its failure in other countries and her vague proposals for addressing those failures, there's no compelling evidence that Warren's ultra-millionaire tax will raise the revenue she claims. The wealth tax is best understood not as a targeted revenue raiser, but as a symbolic declaration of opposition to the existence of outsized wealth, regardless of how it was obtained.
What I want is I want these billionaires to stop being freeloaders.
Warren has described the Ultra-Millionaire Tax as a tool for addressing inequality, but really, it's just a presidential candidate's way of saying, I oppose the existence of very rich people. She could have just said it.